Hey folks, this is Mark Devine with the Unbeatable Mind podcast. Welcome back. Thanks so much for being here today. I certainly appreciate it. I know there's a lot vying for your attention, and the fact that you're here means a lot to me, so thanks very much. I've mentioned this the last few times because my producer, Allison, has asked me to, but if you listen to this podcast on one of our other platforms, it helps to rate it. Right, we have 500 five-star ratings on iTunes, but we're now available on Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Pandora, iHeartRadio. I'm missing one or two. Our website. Spotify, that's it. I don't know if it's iHeartRadio. It's actually Spotify. Yeah, so of course there's not many ratings there, and people won't be able to find it unless someone who's listening goes and rates it. So I appreciate that. Also, a little challenge for you. So today, anytime someone makes a request of you or asks you to do something or to join their project, just say, let me think about it. How about that? And then see how it works. And then I encourage you to extend that to tomorrow, another day, until it becomes your new normal. I can't tell you, I wish I had learned this 30 years ago, Larry. You know? I think about it as better than saying no, because you're not giving someone it's hard to say no to someone. It's really easy to say yes. We're taught to say yes. Mm-hmm. And then we get ourselves caught in all these entanglements and distractions, and we say, why do we ever say yes to that? It could be super simple things, or it could be like really complicated things like, hey, you want to look at starting this business, or you want to invest in this or whatever. Say, let me think about it. And then you can think about it, and if it's a real solid, yeah, this is definitely in, then get back to them. And if it's a no, forget about it. You know, you're under no obligation to go back to that individual and say, I've thought about it and my answer is no. How's that?
That's good. It actually reminds me of, I think it was actually at Unbeatable Mind when my wife and I were there in 2015, the Unbeatable Mind retreat. And you did a segment on greatly simplifying your life. Yeah. And let me think about it, or let me check my calendar. Let me check my calendar. Versus saying yes right away, because especially men, you know, we want to say yes so quickly.
For sure, we're taught that. Our culture teaches us that, and it's a big codependent thing in my life. So now my mantra is look for no in service to the bigger yes. But it's uncomfortable to say no, and also, quite rightly, there might be times where you're like, maybe this is a yes, or you're like, I definitely want to do this, but still say, let me think about it. Right. Because if it doesn't pass the fits test, which is one of our models in Unbeatable Mind, does it fit your personality, your character, your unique offer? Is it important? Is the timing right? And is it simple enough? You might come back later and put it through that little filter and be like, you know what? The timing's not right. I do want to do this, but it's just not right.
Right.
Anyways, we're talking to Larry Hagner of the Dad Edge. Larry, we've done a podcast with him, but it's been like 3 or 4 years, right? A long time ago.
So it was 2015, first time I came on your podcast.
No kidding. Yeah. And you were just kind of spooling up then, and you've made so much progress. Really impressed with what you've accomplished.
Thank you.
Both as a husband, parent, dad, but also as a leader of now a thriving community in the Dad's Edge. So, I don't need to give you any more background on that. Let's just talk, and let's talk about what it means to be a man who was also a father. You know, both of us are fathers. And how to be a good person in the world and live a life of purpose, and to pick yourself up when you get kicked in the balls. With a smile on your face, right? Because that happens quite a bit.
Daily?
Yeah,
a lot of times.
Pretty much, I think so. I was telling, it's funny, this morning I went to the YMCA and I was swimming, and then I took a sauna afterwards, and there was this 27-year-old kid in there, and we were just talking. He just finished the Boston Marathon, and somehow he sparked a little philosophical conversation. Imagine that, sitting in the sauna with Mark Devine. I was like, listen, kid, I pretty much think the meaning of life is to just get kicked in the balls every day and to learn a lesson from it, right? So you just get wiser and wiser, right? Until eventually you're like, where's it going to come today? And then you anticipate the kick, and you can dodge it. That's mastery.
I agree, and that seems to happen daily, I think, with fathers. I mean, especially with the flood of things that that come into our inboxes, come into our lives. Every day is new when you're raising a child and when you have a family. I mean,
one day, one lifetime.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I heard that somewhere.
Every day is new. Right.
That's
exactly.
right.
Well, you're showing up new. Your kid's showing up new. It's almost like when you wake up in the morning, it's like, hello, I'm the guy who was your father yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Can I be him today?
Yeah.
Let me earn that right.
Right.
Kid doesn't have to earn the right.
Right.
You do.
And I think kids really look to you as more or less like we know what we're doing every day, you know?
Right.
Like
biggest illusion ever. Right. Like we're freaking magicians.
Right.
Hey, Dad, you got this all figured out. Yes, I do.
Right.
Wink, wink. Nod. You keep thinking that, son.
When I look back on it, I'll have it figured out.
Right. Wow. So what was your experience of having a dad like?
So my experience was definitely not the norm. I was born in 1975. My mom and dad were married in 1971. They were married for about 4 years. Then they got divorced when I was about 9 months old.
Oh.
I
probably don't remember that day.
I don't. He left. He was out of my life. My mom got remarried. He was a nice guy, but he was also sort of a toxic individual with some alcohol issues. They got divorced when I was 10, and then lo and
behold. Does he know my father? I wonder.
They might have hung out at the bars
together. Hung out together at the same bar.
But I had this very interesting thing happen when I was 12. I started asking a lot of questions about my biological father because I didn't know him. And
wait, what? You just skipped from 9 months to 12. Did anything happen in between there?
Yeah, I didn't want to draw the story out too much, but
I was born at a very young age,
right.
And then I was 36. Wait a minute.
So yeah, what happened was my mom got remarried when I was 4. That man adopted me. He was actually a very nice guy. He taught me a lot about manners. He was former military. Did
you feel like he was your father?
I actually didn't know any different. Okay. I didn't even really realize he adopted me until I was about 8 years old.
Assumed he was your biological
I did.
father.
And then
and your mom didn't say anything?
Well, see, so I skipped over that story too. So I didn't want to draw. But so when I was in preschool, when I was 4, I remember men coming to preschool to pick up their kids. I knew what a dad was, but at that point in my life, like literally, I remember it. I thought the moms just go out and find a dad. Like I thought that was the job. Some do, right? So the first time my mom brought this man home to have dinner with us, I'll never forget. I mean, this was 1979. He came in with the handlebar mustache. He had the 3-piece suit on. He had the briefcase because there was no iPads or anything like that. Trench coat. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Surreal.
This is it. She found us a dad. So like I literally shook this guy's hand. It's a true story.
That's awesome.
I shook his hand and I just big smile. I was like, are you going to be my dad? Like, and I think you just felt like the air in the room, like go completely out. Yeah. But lo and behold, a year later they got married. I mean, I was at the wedding and they had a pretty good marriage for the first couple years. And then I just remember there was a lot of alcohol that was involved. And then, fast forward 8, 9, 10, and then they got divorced when I was 10, but it became a really, really toxic environment to where he was drinking more than he was sober. When he was sober, he was great. When he was drinking, it was extremely toxic. And then he was gone. I have not seen him since. I actually I had a knock on the door about a year ago, and this lady said, I'm from such and such courthouse in St. Louis, Missouri. I was like, oh my gosh, like
what are you doing here?
That's the knock. Like, what did I do? I paid for that ticket. But she said, I just want to let you know your father died, and he left you with this home. You're his only living heir, but I had not seen him for 30 plus years. So that's how I found out he had passed away.
Have you been back to that house?
I did. I actually I didn't want to deal with it. It was a really broken down, horrible home.
Sell it or something?
Yeah, we
didn't like look for some hidden like suitcase with $1 million in or something like that?
Yeah, we didn't find that. So we broke apart the foundation of the home. And
wouldn't that be cool?
Right.
Thanks, Dad.
But the interesting thing that happened, so when he left, I think I was really eager to find a dad. Became really curious because I understood.
At this point, you still didn't know that you had a biological father.
I started asking questions.
I mean, most people figure that out, right?
Yeah,
you had to come from somewhere. The story didn't just bring you.
Right. I mean, that's what happens when you're watching cartoons at that age, but. Yeah, so I started asking questions, and my mom told me, she's like, yeah, actually, I was married once before. You do have a father. And lo and behold, when I was 12, I had the opportunity to meet him, and
Okay.
he had already been remarried, had a 2-year-old son, another one on the way. And we had a relationship for a couple months. And what happened was at the age of 12, we had a conversation. It was cool at first, but then I remember the relationship just feeling strained on his part. Like it just felt like it was distancing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we had a conversation of like, hey, I just feel like something's wrong here. Is there something going on? He's like, well, my life is kind of complicated. I'm trying to start over. And that was his way of basically saying like, hey, I need to.
I can't be here for you.
Right.
Wow. So you really didn't grow up with a dad in your life, period.
My mom was married a handful of 3 times. So there was always men who were in and out.
But no real father figure who connected with you at a heart level or anything.
Mm-mm.
This is a thought question. You don't have to have the answer because there probably isn't one. But do you think it's better to grow up without a father figure in life, which essentially you did, or with a seriously dysfunctional father?
I grew up with both, because I always say this on other shows, that half my life was spent without one, and then the other half was spent with usually because my mom always attracted these men with some sort of addiction issues.
Right.
And
That typically happens.
Right. So I think,
which means she grew up in a family that had that kind of dysfunction and alcoholism. So she was dealing with it at her level, in a codependent level.
Yeah.
So she attracted that, trying to fill that gap or that wound.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
But to answer your question,
have you done any therapy around any of this?
A lot.
A lot. Good for you. Emotional coaching. That's the new word for it. Yeah.
Right.
Good. Yeah. So have I.
I think for a long time I
I haven't done therapy around your problems. I've done therapy around my own.
Hopefully not.
I just want to make that clear.
I have done a lot of therapy. For a long time I lived in that sort of bitter headspace and victim mentality headspace, and now I can definitely say that I'm thankful for that upbringing, because it showed me there were some great lessons there. Yeah. I mean, there really was. There were great lessons there.
You know what? I'm glad you said that, because it's easy to think, woe is me and I'm a victim, and I wish I had an idyllic life like so-and-so or so-and-so. And of course, nobody has an idyllic life. But some people, let's just say some people do. And that's great, but there's no... it's possible that there's no sense of what the other side is like. And so that's why so many people get into personal development and start podcasts who had fucked up childhoods, because they have to do a lot of work. Mm-hmm. A lot of work. And they realize that's actually one of the most beautiful things about the life experience, is actually doing that archaeology work on your past, and not just your life, but your parents and even the generations, and to see how that unfolds. And if you have the perception that you had the idyllic childhood, like I said, maybe you do. My experience is that's pretty rare, but you may never be driven to do that kind of deep depth work, whether you call it depth psychology or yoga, because it can come from different ways, different tools. But that's profound, transformative work.
It definitely was. One part of the story that I didn't share just yet was when I was 30. So last year, I'm kidding, 13 years ago.
I was going to say, you don't look a day over 31, maybe.
But 13 years ago, I was in a coffee shop in St. Louis, and I was there with a friend of mine, and my biological father came walking in the door, and knew it was him. It had been almost 20 years. He hadn't changed much.
Because you met him first when he was when you were 12, I see, for a month or so.
It was a few months.
Yeah. Okay. And then you didn't see him again until 30.
I was 30.
Did he look the same?
He looked pretty much the same, just 20 years older and just a little rounder. But that was really about it, And
did he recognize you?
He did.
Okay.
We ended up having a conversation, and here we are 13 years later. We have a relationship. It's more of a friendship, I think, at this point. But he's been married to the same woman for 40 years. My kids know him as Grandpa.
Really?
And yeah.
And is he healed or gone through some healing? Is he healthier?
He's definitely healthier. He came from a pretty broken childhood himself, but he's done a lot of work himself. And I think the decision that he and I have made is we've only had 1 or 2 conversations about the past, And we've decided life is short. We don't know how much time we have left. He's 70 years old. He's still in great shape, though. And we've just decided, hey, we're just going to move forward, and we're just going to enjoy the time that we have. And that's the decision we've made.
Yeah. So, Larry, you've got now a community and a mastermind. You're working with a lot of men who are fathers. What are the biggest challenges that you see them having in today's world? What keeps coming up again and again?
Oh boy. So what we've really narrowed it down to is these 5 dimensions of being a father, husband, provider, and one is finances.
People struggle with finances.
People struggle with finances.
It's a big one.
Yeah. I mean, none of us are really top personal.
Do you help them with that? I mean, do you have
we have
refer them out to financial planners and stuff?
We have some financial coaches in the community that help our men with that. We actually have, so in our mastermind, we have breakout call teams, and we have specific call teams strictly for finances to help men with budgeting and whatnot.
You loan them money?
What's that?
You loan them money?
We do. And we call Uncle Vinny when they don't pay us back. So knocks on their door. So finances is one. Health is a big one. And we, under the subset of health is, there's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And men are just notorious for...
Just refer them to Unbeatable Mind for that.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
What you got
we talk about your stuff all the time. We're huge fans of it there. So, but yeah, men will always sidestep their own personal self-care, their spiritual being, physical, mental, emotional beings for the sake of others. And one thing that I really learned from you was you have to make sure that you're taking that time for yourself so you can then selflessly serve.
Self-mastery before service.
Right.
Until they come, hand in hand and rise simultaneously.
Right.
Most people, like you said, haven't figured out the mastery part, whether that's physical, mental, emotional, intuition, or spiritual.
Right. Right.
And so they can't bring their whole selves in service to others. So they're actually hurting both.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think most men just really don't understand that. So health is one. Marriage. So you want to hear some scary statistics?
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously we know that 50% of all marriages end in divorce, but the other 50% that stay together, a third of those are unhappy and are on their way to divorce. Another 1/3 are like, I'm happy enough. I don't want to break up and will not to get divorced just for the sake of the kids. And then 15% of all marriages, just 15%, can actually deem themselves as happy and thriving. So only 15% of marriages are actually in that bracket. So that's another one.
Wow.
And then connection.
How do they know the second half? Like the divorce part I can see, that's easy. You just check divorce records. But how do they know that another 30% are unhappy?
Well, I just heard another statistic that 80% of people that quote statistics just make them up. So.
Yeah. I think 50% of what you just said is flat out false.
But 60% of the time
I'm
right.
The 30% of it rings kind of half true.
Those statistics actually came from, obviously, Hal Elrod, right?
Who?
Hal Elrod, The Miracle Morning.
I don't have a clue who that is.
Okay, Hal Elrod, he wrote the book Miracle Morning. He
Okay.
just came out with another book called Miracle Morning for Couples.
Oh, right on.
And so that...
You need to get him on the podcast. Please make a note of that.
Oh, he's great. So he just came out with that book, and he quoted those statistics in that book.
Okay, so it's got to be true.
Yeah. Right. Has to be.
That's pretty scary, though. It's hard to make a marriage work, for sure.
It is. And then another one is the connection with kids. And then leadership. So leading the family, leading ourselves, leading our businesses. Those are the 5 areas we see men either optimize or struggle in.
Right. And of course, every one of those, at the root of it, is just being learning how to be more whole, more complete, more aware. Everything we teach, and I've been teaching for years, is basically everything in your life will be a reflection of your core essence and ability to project that into the world. And most people are completely cut off from it. So they're not connected with themselves, so they can't connect with others. They're not connected with themselves, so they can't connect to their unique purpose in the world. And so they're doing things that they're not passionate about because they're not aligned with something that's their calling, right? And because they're not connected with their calling and they're not connected with themselves and they can't connect with others, and they can't connect with their team, so they suck at leadership. And they have to rely on a bunch of strategies and tactics as opposed to being authentic and real.
Right.
And vulnerable. Well, I don't like that word vulnerable. I choose to use the word authentic instead.
Right. Authentic. Yeah.
Yeah, because SEALs don't like being vulnerable.
Right. I think that's a tough word for a lot of men.
So I just flat out deny the use of that word. We'll let Brene Brown hold that space.
It's a good idea.
I say, guys, you don't have to be vulnerable. Just be authentic. Just be real. Heart mind, Kokoro, means to connect with your heart and then you use your heart in your decision making. So you have to merge your heart and your mind, and then you take action, forceful, bold action, standing your ground. How do you connect with the heart, though? That's the question. That's not easy. Just the intention to be a good person and to be a good father and husband is the first step, I think.
I think that's the biggest key right there is the intention. We say this all the time that so many men are on what we call the drift.
Right.
It's the wash, rinse, repeat. Get up, go to work, go to a job that they hate, come home.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah, exactly. Groundhog
They wake
Day.
up 30 years into that routine and they're like,
Right.
holy shit.
Right.
What have I done? This is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. Where have the days gone by?
We should just turn this into a song
It's
now
just
at this
jam.
point.
Of course, I have no clue how to sing or play an instrument except for the ukulele. And I suck at that. The future projects.
Future lessons. But no, that's, there was a quote in Napoleon Hill's book, Outwitting the Devil, that the definition of hell is meeting the man that you could have been when you're on your deathbed.
Yeah.
And I think,
by the way, that most people don't know about that book. I read that, or I listened to it actually recently. It wasn't published.
Right.
The family refused to publish it after his death. But it was the last book he wrote, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they were very, conservative, Christian, and they thought he had lost his mind with that one, I think.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's actually a really good book.
Oh, it's
Outwitting
fascinating. Yeah.
Check it out. Let's do a podcast with Napoleon Hill.
From
you think
the grave.
he'll come back from the grave for that one? God, wouldn't that be cool? We should just have someone like channel him, and pretend it's Napoleon. I bet you we get pretty close to what he would
probably
say.
Get somebody to do that.
I could probably channel it. I read his book like 10 times. I listened to his audio tapes.
Yeah.
It's great stuff.
Oh,
he's the original master. What were we talking about?
The drift. We just drifted. We're talking about the drift.
All over the place.
But yeah, I think most men just struggle with that drift. And I think what a lot of men struggle with is intentionality, is being purposeful with their time, their mentality, spirituality, and just being their authentic selves. Is where a lot of us are on the drift, and we want so badly to live that life of intention and purpose. So many men are confused about well, how do I do that? And how do I take the first step to do that?
Do you think it's because our culture is just so wishy-washy and materialistic that, this is my experience, to get drawn into, that rat race, need to identify with, the financial success and the white picket fence and having, everything be perfect on the outside, but there's no path to learn about your internal domain. Right, the things that you're talking about,
right? The
spiritual center, what's important to you, the things, we try to draw people back into both yourself and with your community, and we do it in Unbuilt Mind. I just answered my own question, but what do you think?
I think if you ask most men, how's life? Fine. How's work? Good. How are the kids? Fine. Our two.
You know what FINE means? It's an acronym.
What is it?
Fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and extremely agitated.
That explains a lot.
Yeah.
Then.
Anytime you hear someone say fine, just think, yeah, you're fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and extremely agitated.
That actually explains a lot. No, but I think most men, they get to that point where they are living life in their mid-30s and 40s, and they're kind of like, this is not the way I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And now I'm in this, like you said, the rat race where I've got my wife, my kids, all these people depend on me now. So maybe it's just too late for me to live that life. I now have to live this life for others.
People get entrenched in their patterns. They get entrenched in their systems, and they feel trapped.
Right.
But it's never too late to do a do-over, is it?
No, it's not.
So how does one start? Like, what do you like? If someone comes in, they're just like, I'm completely clueless about where to go, and they join your mastermind or your coaching program, whatever. Where do you start them? How do they begin the process of transformation and the do-over?
So what we have them do is what's called the core value exercise, where so many of us unconsciously, we know what those core values are. Like we've probably have dated a woman and you're like, I don't know what it is about this girl, but I'm not feeling it. I should, because on the outside, like, she's beautiful, she's this, she's that, but it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. And then, and wouldn't
it be nice if most people were able to pay attention to that little voice system?
Right.
Usually they wait until after they say I do, then they're like, what have I done?
Right. And 50%, there it is right there.
What did I do when I said I do?
Right. But we have them do this core value exercise where they go through a list of core values, 150 core values, and they eliminate down to 5 to 7. And then we have them write what's called a being statement. And what we see with most men is that one exercise will create so much clarity for them, because then they'll look back on some of the decisions they made and they're like, wow, no wonder I made the decision that I did. And then once they write that being statement, it's a mission statement of how they're going to live their life. And what we encourage the men to do is, you need to read this every day, and then act in accordance with that. And then we're big on morning routines as well. You've got to start your day with that core value exercise, what you're going to do and how you're going to live intentional outside that drift.
Nice.
And we see men like literally step out of that drift and then start to live that intentional life.
How long does that usually take?
We have them do that right away, and then, but in the mastermind, the core being of the mastermind is every single month we tackle those 5 dimensions that I mentioned. So we don't really believe in balance; we believe in optimization. So optimizing those 5 dimensions as best you can, and sharing best demonstrated practices within that mastermind.
How do you get individuals in your with your program to eliminate distractions and begin to tamp down the overwhelm that everyone feels?
Boundaries. So for instance, being so intentional with your time, we encourage the men even to write their schedules, their journals and that kind of thing. Because otherwise, I think I even heard this on one of your podcasts, or read it in your book. If you're open to everybody else's agenda, you'll never get to your own. So like your inbox, your text messages, if you're not intentional there, those things are going to take your time. So what we tell men to do is, look at your day and literally schedule in everything. So like, for instance, a good boundary is put your phone away, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Be intentional with your family, get away from work at that point. And even though like a lot of what we do is on social media, we have a Facebook group for what we do. We tell men, be on there for 10 minutes. Don't get lost down the rabbit hole and waste your time and get on the drift. Be there for 10 minutes and then get off. Your time, if you want to be intentional with your time with what we do, be on our mastermind calls, and we have 18 of them a week. And then every Sunday we go screen free. We encourage the men to completely disconnect from your devices and just be with your family.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think I need to work on that one, actually.
I think we all do.
What's your morning ritual like?
My morning ritual is, so I get up before the family, and then I get to my journal, and then I write 3 things that I'm grateful for. I write 3 things that I'm excited about. I write 1 affirmation, what I'm going to do for exercise. And then I write down 3 personal objectives that three personal goals that I want to take care of that day, 3 professional goals of that day. And then if
you're going to work on,
that I'm going to work on or that I'm going to achieve.
Okay.
I pencil the things in that I'm going to do at that time, shut all distractions off when I'm doing certain activities. And then at the end of the day, I always do an after action review.
Oh, nice.
How did I do? Did I do the things that I said? So it's a 2-page journal. Did I do the things that I said I was going to do? And if I didn't, I need to gut check that.
1,000 lashings.
1,000 lashes by my 11-year-old.
Mason. Oh, he's funny. Do you consider yourself emotionally mature?
I consider myself more emotionally mature than I was when I first started this 5 years ago, but I'm a lifelong student.
And how have you personally worked to try to connect at a deeper level with your feelings and understand your emotional patterns?
So I don't know if you expected the show to go in this way, but
I don't have any expectations.
Okay.
Like my friend Christine Hasser says, expectations will give you an expectation hangover because they never meet your original vision of what's going to happen. So,
in my up until 2014, I was doing a lot of work, a lot of mindset work, a lot of personal growth. I was seeing a counselor. I really wanted to kind of get over my childhood and move on and be a better father. And I really just couldn't figure out, like, well, what's the X factor here?
Mm-hmm.
What am I missing here?
Mm-hmm.
And then I found your book, and then I found Unbeatable Mind.
Did you find it like on a street corner somewhere?
I did. This homeless guy was, I'll sell this to you for $1.
That's awesome.
All right, I'll take it. I was on Amazon, and I'll never forget this. I was on Amazon, and I was buying, I don't remember what the book I was there for, but I remember seeing Unbeatable Mind. I remember seeing the cover, and I was just like, wow, what is this? And then I grabbed the book, I read the book, and then I bought it on audio.
Oh, cool.
And then I listened to it like relentlessly. Like I listened to it, I think it was 12 times.
Really?
Yeah. Because I listened to it constantly.
I haven't listened to it once. Maybe I should listen to it. Is it any good?
You should check it out.
Is it good?
Yeah. But that book, I remember, mowing my grass with my earbuds in. And I remember you talking about, in the audio version of it, I remember the fear wolf and the courage wolf. And I was like, that was it for me. Like, I was like, my emotional maturity, my self-growth, my everything that I'm doing, I've been feeding this fear wolf like a raw T-bone steak, like on a
That's
daily.
A hungry wolf.
It was very hungry. Sometimes it was a porterhouse, just depending. And
it's not uncommon, by the way. Most people have that negative programming, and they're just clueless to it because it's their bias. It's their what I call background obviousness.
Right.
They're inside the label. Or inside the bottle. They can't read the label. Right. And the label is negative. So you keep feeding it that T-bone every day.
You do. And that was such an aha moment for me. I was like, oh my gosh, well, that's what I've been doing. And I think my emotional maturity really started, I think, when I started sacrificing my ego. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what? I don't know anything.
Right.
I just need to like literally wipe the slate clean.
That's your wake up moment when you realize that everything that you had been living on the story that you had identified with was wrong and negative, right? And needed to be either thrown out or completely rewritten, right?
Exactly.
And that brings great humility.
It does. And that's still, so when you ask about emotional maturity, I go back to that. I'm still such a student of it. Right. Like I'm hungry for that information and that practice, and always trying to be that 1% better every day. But it really boils down to, hey, I'm a lifelong student and I'm always evolving. Yeah, I agree.
Well said. And I think men in particular have a really tough time with emotional development. We're just not taught. We're not even taught that it's important, and let alone how to do it.
Right.
So that's one of my mission is to change the dialogue. So third mountain of Unbeatable Mind is emotional development. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people get stuck right at the base of that mountain because it's scary. It's a very steep climb. It's kind of like the free ascent guy. You have to go up it without any ropes.
Right.
And if you fall off, you have this feeling like you're going to die because, some of those emotions are really hard to deal with, especially if you grew up in a family that had serious dysfunction in it. Because, here's the thing. First 5 years, I've said this before, first 36 months, you're completely undifferentiated. There is no sense of self. You're completely identified with your mom. If your mom is dealing with abuse, alcoholism, codependence, whatever the name the dysfunction, you got it. You got it. Mm-hmm. You can't not have it because it's part of your psychosomatic being that is forged at that undifferentiated stage. And then you go into the stage, the next stage up to 5 is like where you start to develop some egoic structures, but you're still not separated from the mom. And so you kind of have this, me, she kind of thing developing. And so you're getting a little bit more structure, but you're still taking on all that dysfunction. And so here's what I'm talking about earlier. It's like then our brain starts to develop, and now we start to get cognitively strong, and during that, we don't recognize it during that first 5 years if we've had dysfunction or lack of emotional connection or attachment issues, that something happens to our brain that basically shuts down the feeling or the emotional sector. And so when we get into this stage where we're going to really fully develop emotionally. We don't. And then we go right into the neurological development, and that overrides the emotional. And then you have no ability, no capacity to feel your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I know that? Because I've studied that ad nauseum, and I'm actually going to a 10-day seminar coming up called the Hoffman Process, which goes deep on that. They call it the negative love syndrome. It's fascinating stuff. So here's the deal. I'm not saying everyone has that issue, but there's some version of that happens, and furthermore, men are wired, differently. Men are wired to go out and hunt and kill and to not feel as a result of that. Or look at the Navy SEALs. If Navy SEALs were all gooey, we wouldn't be able to do our job, right? And so there's a very good reason for all that. But then all of a sudden, you try to grow as a human being. Let's say Navy SEAL Mark Devine has this wake up moment, and all of a sudden he's like, I'm committed to growing. Like, I had to get out of the SEALs because I was growing beyond the capacity of that organization to hold the space for me. And all the work, Larry, was in the emotional mountain. All the work I had to do. And I couldn't grow spiritually without the emotional development. I tried like hell. I've been studying Zen since I was 20.
Mm-hmm.
And you can only go so far. It's like my yoga teacher, Gary, I've said this before. He said, if you're an asshole and you meditate for 20 years, you'll be a more focused asshole.
That makes sense.
I know. I didn't mean to go off in this like preachy rabbit hole, down this preachy rabbit hole.
No,
but
actually,
it just sparked a thought. It's like, it's really, 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 really hard for men to do emotional development, but it's equally as many reallys important. I
have a question for you.
In my opinion.
Yeah. I have a question for you that I think would really help serve men is where I see men get stuck, and I'm sure you do too, is, okay, I'm at the base of the emotional mountain. Yeah. Where do I even start? Yeah.
Get yourself a coach, because we need someone to hold a mirror up to us. We can't see it. Like I said, it's really impossible to see, because the shadow, all those aspects of your emotional self, even just shutting down your entire emotional apparatus, or ability to feel emotions, is hidden from our view. We don't know how to expose it. And so if you can't expose something, then you pretty much are identified with it. It's just who you are. And so a good therapist / emotional coach can basically say, okay, this is what I see, Larry. This is your experience. Let's take it out and like hold it in front of you, almost like an object. Now you're objectified it instead of subjectified it, meaning you're not identified with it more. It's something you can work with. And so awareness is the first step of the issue, and then you shed the light, and the awareness and the light will eventually flush out the darkness. And that's a metaphorical way of saying it. You want to work at each issue one layer at a time. It's like peeling an onion, and you're never at the center of the onion, right? You just keep on peeling. Mm-hmm. But every layer that you peel off or you penetrate into your core essential self, you get more and more aware, and you feel more and more light, and you also feel more and more love. And it's that love which then it's the emotional side. And anything that contradicts that is painful or feels off, right? And so like a breach in a love bond between you and your wife feels horrible in your heart region. It's because you've just cut love off. And so then that's a signal to, like, that's where empathic communication of the heart mind is like, holy shit, I just created a little problem here. I can fix it. Anyways, so you need you need someone to hold the mirror up to yourself and say, you know what, this is what it looks like from my perspective. Someone who's trained to see that and help you with that. That's my first thought, But one other thing I'll say is that's hard for a lot of guys, because we're taught in our society that you go to therapists when you break down. Like, I'm having a breakdown. Nobody wants to be associated with an emotional breakdown or weakness or something like that. And I'm here to say that it's strength. It's strength. It brings strength. So the old model, the American model, is the man is like the mighty oak. But guess what? That's the first thing to go when the flood hits. Or the storm, the oak or the fire, it goes. I'd rather be the bamboo or the reed that is supple and can bend and is strong through its suppleness, strong through its flexibility and authenticity, and can rebound and grow back really quickly. So emotional development brings that suppleness, and you still have the strength, In fact, you have more strength because you're more durable, you're more flexible, you're more compassionate, you're more self-aware, and you're more humble. And all these are great qualities for leaders and for parenting.
That makes a lot of sense. That's a great visual. I wanted to ask you one other question too. I know this is
we're on the Good Dad
right.
podcast here with Larry.
But just one quick side note is because I think it would help serve. Why is it so hard for men to ask for help?
Because it's seen as a sign of weakness, and they haven't no modeling in it. You know, I've never saw my dad ask for help, nor did I ever hear him say "I love you" or hug me. It was hard, right? And nor did his father, and nor did his father's father. So these things are passed down. I've heard it said that it takes like, first thing, epigenetics stuff is passed down 7 generations, and then it's literally one person in every 2 or 3 generations. I don't know. Someone can correct me on this. One individual out of a family will break free, like every generation or something like that. Maybe that's it. So you broke free. You're the one who's ascending and growth mindset, but growth, it's not just mindset, but really accelerating your development, full spectrum development. I'm the one in my family.
That makes sense.
Everyone listening to this is probably the one in their family.
Right.
Unless you came from one of those perfect families. Right. Or they're soon to be. Yeah, you're just not taught. I think that's changing quickly. You know, I've seen a big shift even in the last 10 years, you know. You know, when I first started teaching Navy SEALs what I called SEAL Fit Yoga, it's not Kokora yoga. Like there was a lot of crossed eyes and like hemming and hawing, and so I just stopped calling it yoga and just, you know, that a lot of the drills from Unbeatable Mind came out of that era. And so they're drills. Navy SEALs love drills. Now the SEALs are using these drills.
Right.
And the SEALs don't know it's yoga either because they would never, you know, even though the military, you know, they're using it for recovery and they're bringing mindfulness in. Well, mindfulness is yoga, right? Yoga just means whole, you know, reunion with yourself. And there's many different tools and methods and strategies for developing that wholeness. I can't imagine any man out there not wanting to be whole if they really understood what that meant.
Right.
Because just the experience of life is so much more refined, so much more joyful, peaceful, blissful. And everyone says they want things like peace of mind, but that's just a concept to them. Peace of mind is a felt, embodied, lived experience. It's wholeness.
Right.
Contentment is wholeness. You know, we were talking today, and this kid I was talking to earlier, I mentioned, he's like, I went to school in Montana, and so we were talking about guns, and he's like, it's like a badge of honor when you go out and kill your first moose or something like that. And I was like, interesting. I could see that if you needed to eat, like for survival, go kill a moose. But my experience is the more whole I become, the more peaceful I become, and the less desire I have to injure any sentient being. I would never go kill an animal willingly unless I had to feed my family, and then that's a different discussion.
Right.
And I'm a Navy SEAL. Now, if China invaded the United States, would I pick up my rifle and go after them? Heck yeah, because that's my duty to protect my country and my family.
Right.
But at the highest level, right, the warrior is not one that wants to go take any life. But if it's your duty, you've got to fulfill your duty. This stuff gets really, really nuanced, but that's why self-awareness training, knowing thyself, is so important. And you can't know yourself if you don't know yourself emotionally. It can't just be a cognitive activity. That's just part of the equation.
Right.
It's the easy part, actually. Thanks for the questions. This has been a great podcast. Right. Appreciate having me on the show.
Brought to you by the Dad Edge podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
Yes, like literally the next question I was going to ask you is, why do guys repress their feelings? I think we answered that one, didn't we?
We did. We sure did. Yeah, we see the same thing. It's the hardest thing for men to just ask for help, surrender the ego and just ask for help. But it's, as you said, we use the term, you feel lighter. Yeah. More aware when you do surrender the ego and ask for help. So that, we see the same things.
What now you brought your son Mason.
I did.
Cool dude. You told me that he wrote a book.
He did.
Is it the Good Kid Project?
It's more like I need a new dad.
I need a new dad. No. Hey Mason, what's the best thing about your dad? It's fun to play with. Oh, that's fun. Well, that's a great answer because, when my son was growing up, one of the things that I had always heard about parenting was just to be present with your kids and like put the iPhone down, get out of your head. And so I really tried. It was like a practice. And it led to a lot of playfulness and spontaneity. And he really appreciates it. To this day, we're very playful. He doesn't want to talk about anything. Anytime the Unbeatable Mind stuff comes out, he just puts his earbuds in.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I tried like heck to get him to read Unbeatable Mind. In fact, I used it as a bludgeon. Was when he was fixing his car and his engine blew. He needed a new engine. I was like, I'll pay for the engine after you read Unbeatable Mind. So he finally listened to the audiobook. He's like, man, that's actually pretty good, Dad. I learned some things. I'm like, good.
Nice.
I'm glad.
Yeah. He wrote the book, Never Give Up No Matter What. And
Sweet.
we do play together quite a bit. The funny thing is, if I'm just being totally honest with myself and authentic, out of those 5 dimensions that I mentioned, so finances, health, marriage, connection with kids, and leadership, to be honest, and my own son's in the room, the one that is toughest for me is the connection with the kids. And I think it goes back to I'm constantly looking for that blueprint of like, well, did my dad do this with me, how did we do this growing up? And there was none of that.
Well, the default pattern for everyone settles into parenting at the level of their parents' development. And it's very hard to grow beyond or to do anything beyond the level of your parents' development without some serious work.
True.
And so if you didn't have any modeling, then you're just drawing from a blank slate.
We are. So anything that they want to learn, the funny thing is going back to that setting this ego. I think when kids come to their dad, you always want to be like, oh, well, son, let me show you how to do that. We're always,
I've always had that vision too, but my son never, showed me how to like string a bow and, start a fire in the woods.
Right.
We knew how to shovel snow.
Right.
And mow the lawn.
Right.
Pick up sticks.
Right.
They're useful skills for sure.
Yeah. Right. They are. Right. But when it comes to things like, Dad, I really want to learn how to fire a gun. And I was like, I was never really taught. So let's go learn together.
That's cool.
Just things like that. We've done a lot of things together. First time activities, things we've never done. We do them together for the first time. Like, hey, I don't know. Let's go learn together.
Right on.
So that's more the mentality of that connection.
What kind of skills are you working on right now?
So we're looking into hunting and outdoor. We want to do some sort of outdoor survival skill.
Oh, cool! Yeah.
So we want to learn how to be out in the woods and just literally like, hey, how do you filter your own water? How do you build a shelter?
Now, do you do that? Would you do that on your own, or would you go to a course like Boss or
course?
Yeah. Boulder Outdoor Survival School is a good one, and Tom Brown.
Okay. Yeah,
both are great. And Tom has worked with some team guys. That's definitely more of like a Native American Apache version, and Boulder Outdoor Survival School is more of like a Patagonia, wearing.
Right.
It's more of a prepper version, probably.
Right. Prepper version. Yeah.
Anyways, well, that's pretty cool. What's the hardest thing for you in being a father?
The hardest thing for me is...
You may have just described part of it.
I did.
Right, which is being connected.
It is sometimes being connected. Not being distracted is hard. The hardest thing about being a father is every day is new. And it's always gut checking my own ego to be like, hey, I'm not going to have all the answers. And I may or may not do this fatherhood thing the way I really want to do it today. But the one thing I am proud of though, is that when I do mess up, I'm the first one to come and be the humble one and apologize.
That is such a huge thing, Larry. I totally agree with that. That was one of the things I really actively worked on with Devin, because you're going to fuck up. And there's times where I'm like, oh, crap. And then the quicker you can go sit with them and say, listen, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have done that. And he's like, it's okay, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they see that you're actually willing to change your mind or to grow, and they understand that you're not perfect. That's such great modeling.
Well, and the nice thing too, so
trying to be perfect as a parent is poison.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it will ruin your journey. Right. We have 4 boys. 5 and 3 are the little ones. 11 and 13 are the older ones. And I am proud to say that there have been humility lessons that I think that they've learned, because when they mess up, I'm always pleasantly surprised. They'll come to me and be like, "Hey, Dad, I'm sorry. Like, I did this."
Mm-hmm.
And we have a rule in our house that if you come and tell us that you did something, you won't be in trouble and you won't be grounded. We'll have a conversation about it.
Mm-hmm.
But, come and tell us. We're that safe haven of like, look, when you mess up, you can come here. Because I think 11 and 13, you have certain problems there. And then when you have 15, 16, 17, 18, into your 20s, the problems just get more complex and bigger. And we're trying to develop that connection with them now to where like, hey, when you mess up.
Does that rule end at 18 when they're adults?
At 18, then it's done.
Hey, Dad, I robbed this 7-Eleven and, it's okay, son. You told me about it. It's all good.
Now you have to go serve some time.
Yeah. My dad had one of those conversations with a judge. So you go to jail or join the Army. So we're a military family.
Do I want A or B? All right,
I'll take B.
I'll go do the military. Yeah.
That reminds me of a fun story, which is completely random, but I had these interns. Should I tell the story? Yeah, okay, I'm already done. So I had these two interns who were like 18, wanting to be Navy SEALs, and they were living at our old training center. And I had this operations officer who apparently was a little slutty. We found out later because she was sleeping with one of the interns. Drama at SEAL headquarters, right? I don't think I've ever told this story before. It's great. So anyways, I called these two kids out because I knew the one who was sleeping with her obviously knew he was sleeping with her, and the other one obviously knew that his friend was sleeping with her, and I had to call them both out. And of course, I had to fire her too. About time. So the kid, who's now a Navy SEAL, who was sleeping with her, I said, "Dude, you screwed up. Go pack your bags and go home. I hope to see you in the SEAL team someday." And the other one, I looked at him in the eye. I said, "You knew, didn't you?" He goes, "Yes, Coach." I said, "Okay." I said, I'll give you a choice. I said, "You can either pack your bags and leave or do 5,000 burpees by Monday morning." He goes, "Burpees." Wow. It was Friday afternoon. Like, he did not even take a breath. I said, literally, or you can do 5,000 burpees by 8 o'clock Monday morning. He goes, "Burpees."
Oh my gosh.
And he was doing burpees all weekend long.
That is unreal.
Isn't that awesome?
Mason, you hear that? You got to do burpees this weekend.
Only 5,000.
Only 5,000.
All right. So your project, do you still use the Good Dad Project as your primary platform?
So that's our home, is gooddadproject.com. I don't think we can ever outgrow that name. The podcast is the Dad Edge. Our mastermind is the Dad Edge Alliance.
Okay.
But everything's more Dad Edge-ish.
Dad Edge-ish?
Yeah.
That's a very edgy term.
Right.
Okay. And anything interesting coming up that you want to promote and talk about?
So we actually host a yearly event called the Dad Edge Summit. This is
cool.
the second year we're doing it. We do it in June every year. That's coming up in June.
Where do you do that?
We do that in St. Louis.
St. Louis.
Yeah, we actually have a couple speakers coming out. Robert Cujo Teschner, who I believe I introduced you to. He's a former Top Gun instructor. He's going to be speaking. He wrote a book called Debrief to Win. Yeah. He's going to be out there along with some other speakers that we have. And then, of course, our mastermind group is always available. And you can always find that at gooddadproject.com/alliance.
Awesome. Larry, thanks for making your way out here in person with Mason.
I love it. Yeah.
What fun. What else are you going to do while you're in San Diego?
So we have actually spent the last 3 days here.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Did you take them to Disneyland today?
We tried out Legoland, and we were there for 2 hours and left.
Legoland's a trip. It's not for everyone.
It's not. So we did the zoo. To be honest, we did a lot of simple things, hanging out on the beach, throwing the football, frisbee, just enjoying the sights. After this, we fly home tonight, but I'm taking them downtown so we can see like the battleships. And
you should take them over to Coronado and show them the SEAL training base.
I would
or
love
just drive
to take
by
them
it.
over there.
Just drive over the bridge and drive down Orange Avenue toward the Strand, and you'll see all the SEAL buildings and everything. I mean, it doesn't look like much, but you could stop at the Hotel and go out on the beach and maybe see some of the class running by or something.
That would be
a good experience for them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Good job with all your incredible work.
Thank you. You as well.
We'll stay in touch.
Sounds good.
Hoo-yah.
Hoo-yah.
All right, folks, that's it for the Unbeatable Mind podcast. Let's go check out Larry's work at thegooddadproject.com. The summit sounds like a lot of fun. Maybe I'll come some year.
I would love it.
I need to get an invite, of course. So, you know the deal. Train hard and do the work, especially the emotional work, as you work on yourself so you can be there for other people. Wake up, grow up, clean up your shit so you can show up with an unbeatable mind.
Love that.
Hoo-yah.
Hoo-yah.
See you next time. Hey, this is Mark Devine. Thanks very much for watching the Unbeatable Mind podcast on YouTube. You can also find the podcast at iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, and unbeatablemind.com/podcasts. Be sure to check out the new episode released every week. Hoo-yah.